So I continue to do little bits on the nose cone, just filling in these little gas holes that I mentioned before. I tend to find that when I first do something like this, I'll end up obviously picking out all the obvious stuff, filling it all in, going over it, and then the more and more you do it, the more and more sort of picky you get, because you start noticing the ones that you've missed. So eventually you end up sort of trying to fill in minute holes, and then before long you realise you've spent quite a lot of time actually doing it, and for the last bit doesn't really change it that much, so you sort of have to give yourself a bit of a check as to how far you're going into something. And sort of remembered the brief from the owner that he didn't want it to look perfect, so obviously he decided that enough was enough. So I've still got a couple of little holes that I might have had around here, but they're going to be minute and covered up by the sort of grid anyway. So I come to the stage, so that's enough, and then I'll decided to start on the sort of top coat. So obviously what I've done, taped off the outside edges here, and then last night I sort of came outside. Let's just try and turn this over a little bit. And had to go spraying the underside of the nose cone. Obviously satin black again, obviously covers up all the areas that I've done reinforcements on the back edge. So now I'm going to basically take this tape off, give it a bit more of a wipe over, and get myself ready pretty soon to start doing the outside edge. A little bit of overspray come through as expected really, so I'll just make sure that's not going to cause any issues. Obviously that the outside's going satin black anyway, then I can crack on from there. So I've got about a can and a half left. It took about a can to do the inside edge. I'm hoping I'll have enough to get a good coating on this outside edge, and we'll decide whether or not I need to get any more to do it one more final coat. So let's get myself ready for this. So I've done a few more coats of the satin black just to slowly build up the layers, give it a chance to fully dry. I've only ever sprayed satin black with aerosols, and you do tend to get an issue with, particularly with satin, whereby because you're using sort of fan effect to try and overlay one line with another one, so you just try and get like a continuous wet line sort of drifting from top to bottom. I find with satin you do end up getting sort of like a tiger stripe effect. So with the amount of overspray you get, so you can still sort of see it looks a little bit as if you've got different lines or bits missed out. Tends to be an issue with satin. So I'm going to be doing a bit of a light rub down to get rid of any little pips and stuff that are on there, because obviously I'm spraying it in a little bit of a dirty workshop. The spray booth has long since gone after I had to get the second kit car in the garage. So I'm going to give it a bit of a light rub down with some wet and dry, dampen down the floor a little bit, try and protect as much as I can, then give it another good coating with another can of satin black to try and literally get a nice wet line, so try and avoid all these little tiger stripe effects. When that's all dry, then it'll get a couple of coats of a satin lacquer to try and even out the sort of look of it all. But it's coming okay. There's very little signs of any of the damage that was obviously on the nose cone in this area, as well as rounding obviously that corner there, across here, all the way down the front. All seems to be pretty good, and obviously in this top corner around here, and we had another crack over here. So yeah, it looks pretty good as it is. Just hoping I can make it a little bit more even and try and sort of get rid of any of the effect that the satin does. What I'm probably going to do is make sure I do all this area as like a wet coat, because that's obviously the area you would see most of the car. I'm trying to make sure this bit looks okay. So I'll probably end up standing the nose cone up with this bit up in the air, and then sort of get a nice sort of motion going from top to bottom. Not so much of an issue with the sides, because obviously you don't see them as much as that, but the idea is to try and get a nice appearance of the nose cone if we can. So yeah, it's coming along. Just going to give it a light rub down, get ready for the other coat. So I'm getting ready to do the final coat of satin black on the nose cone. When I mentioned the other day about the fan effect, most aerosols will give a wedge shaped fan, so it comes out the nozzle sort of that sort of shape. Depending on the quality and the use of the spray gun or the can, that's the sort of desired effect. A lot of the professional spray guns have a much wider fan, and obviously smaller ones, hobby ones, have a much thinner one, and detail ones. So the idea is that when you do end up doing your spraying, we'll try and get a nice consistent distance from the actual piece you're doing. And obviously this suggests we're using that sort of fan, so when you can do your sort of first pass like that, you'll obviously see you get obviously more concentration in the middle and less on the outsides, where the overspray would be at the top. But the idea is, once you've done your first pass, you sort of come along and go down and obviously have a bit of an overlap. That way you'll end up with a nice even spread. The obviously the paint will obviously even itself out and flow better. Ideally you want to try and spray it with a bit of kit actually in the position it would normally be. So ideally the nose cone would be sprayed obviously laying down, and you'd actually spray down onto top of it like that and sort of pass it that way. But obviously with an aerosol you're not going to get a very good fantastic lay anyway, and that's more the sort of idea you would do with a professional spray gun. So I decided to give me the best opportunity to get a decent flow out and be able to see the wet line nicely, not getting any drips off of the aerosol can. I'm going to try and do it in the position it's shown, but I'll probably start off, once I've done all the cleaning, until I have lightly wet and dried this down last night, is going to try and tackle literally from here round to about there, that area all the way down. Again, obviously overlapping the appropriate amount, and obviously passing the item as well. So if you tend to stop here, you might end up not getting a full coat. So really you should sort of start here, go past and stop, start, sort of stop that way there to get a nice overlap, and go past the item you're spraying, and then going to do that both sides, and then quickly come around and try and again get the pass at the top. So hopefully the idea would be that all that wet chemical that is as it sort of flash off would obviously flow into one, give us a nice even coat. So that's the plan anyway. I've gone out and got some additional paint in case I need it. I've actually had it inside the house, obviously a bit cold now, to try and get the temperature up reasonably warm, and I've got the heater on in the garage as well. So hopefully it'll all lead to getting a nice final coat on it, and then we can do some preparation either this evening or tomorrow to try and get some of the lacquer on. So first, cleaning. I'm using the professional cloths that I used for the other spraying before. This is the typical garage stuff you would see. There's also a blue one which I don't like so much, because this one is much more absorbent. The blue one doesn't seem as good. And obviously I'm using the pre-wiped stuff I've used before with the pump gun. So obviously you spray out what you want, give it a good spray up, and it will obviously again start from the top to try and get any of the dust and stuff to start flowing down, and obviously follow on with the cloth afterwards. And any stubborn areas you can obviously put chemical onto the actual cloth itself and then wipe it occasionally. And obviously that'll clean it as well. I'll then probably let it flash up on its own to make sure all the chemicals are gone, again with the heater sort of taking the chill off the garage, and then come back out later on, maybe with a tack rag, sort of pre-paint tack rag you can get, just to get rid of any last bits of dust, and then obviously start doing the last coat of the satin after that. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the stuff that's come off of here. So this had a light rub down, as I said, with wet and dry yesterday, and just sort of wiped it off with a bit of dry cloth, and that's obviously with the chemical. That's obviously dragged some more of the dust off of there. So I let that say flash off, and then get a tack rag ready. So even though I've only just sprayed and wiped this down, you can already see where debris starts sort of sticking to it already. So there's a little bit of dust here. Obviously I'm not in a controlled environment at the moment now that the spray booth's gone, so I just got to make the best I can. I'm going to go around and sort of pick up things like this just with the tack rag. So these tack rags that people use prior to painting, they're basically individually wrapped pieces of cotton. They've got a substance on it that just makes them slightly sticky, a little bit like honey. The idea is you're going to go around just before you do your painting, wipe the surfaces over, just to try and get all these little bits of contaminants off here, so it's as clean as it possibly can be. Obviously after that you then should try to avoid touching it with your skin if you can, and obviously just to try and get as clean as you can before you start doing the painting. So that's what I'm going to do now, is go around and have a go at wiping the surfaces down with one of these. So I let that say flash off, and then get a tack rag ready. So even though I've only just sprayed and wiped this down, you can already see where debris starts sort of sticking to it already. So there's a little bit of dust here. So I'm going to go around and have a go at wiping the surfaces down with one of these. So in that little video, the speeded up bit, you can see it looked like I got quite a nice wet coat on all the sides there. But because, again, with satin, or certainly in my experience with satin black, you can see it's all come out sort of tiger striped again. So it's got nothing to do with the amount of paint that's going on there. It's purely maybe the quality of the aerosol can, the tip, how it's gone on there, possibly the temperature as well, and maybe my inexperience of spraying to this level. So what I did the other night was when I found that when I hit this with a bit of wet and dry, it did actually make the appearance better. So what I'm hoping to do is to lightly rub this down again, just to take maybe the shine of it off of it a little bit in certain places, even out. Pardon me. And then hopefully with the satin lacquer that I've got over here, again Halford's finest, a satin lacquer, I'm hoping that'll give it a bit more of an even appearance. Obviously it's designed to take the shine off of most gloss paints as well, so I'm hoping that'll even it all up. So a bit more wet and drying, and then maybe push on with the lacquer. Well, I've given it a light rub down, dried it all off, sprayed it with the paint prep again, wiped it all down again. I'm just going to go over again with the same tack rag, just a different edge of it now, just to try and get any last bits of dust off, as I did before, and then hopefully start shaking up a few rattle cans of the clear satin, or sort of the satin lacquer. Hopefully get a more uniform finish. I've just given that a coat of the satin lacquer. It went on much the same as the last coat of the satin black. Giving it as wet a coat as I can, so hopefully going to let it dry and see what happens. Might have to go over and do some more coats yet, so we have to see how it comes out when it's dry.